Hello, fellow Heretic Astartes, and welcome to CSM 101. This is part of our ongoing 101 series. We at 6 Plus are building a bunch of comprehensive unit guides to the armies we play, and including some detachment guides. Having done GSC, we're moving on to the Chaos Space Marines today. This is an army I absolutely adore, one of the most flavorful and exciting armies to play in Warhammer 40,000. They've had their book for some time now, so it's definitely a good time to be appraising their units and having a look into the different ways you can use them on the tabletop. Tom Very Lowest of Men here, and I will be endeavouring to give you the ins and outs of how you can maximise a whole bunch of different Chaos Space Marines units, different builds, different combinations to try, some detachments you might want to see them in, and take it forwards from there. If there's other things you'd like to see, do let me know. We're always looking to serve you, the consumer. Please do hit like and subscribe. Please do leave us a comment. It all helps to drive that algorithm goodness. If you'd like to sign up and support us financially as a YouTube member, we'd love to have you. We're over 100 now, and we're building that 6++ community. And of course, there are always Chaos Space Marine chats going on in our Discord. And if you're interested in getting some CSM coaching, I'd be more than happy to work with you. Just get in touch via Discord as well. So let's dive into it. We've got a lot of units to cover. It's a big old range, the Chaos Space Marines, and we're going to start where we should obviously start, with the big baddie himself, Abaddon the Despoiler. Now, Abaddon's a fantastic unit. He packs an incredible damage 3, strength 14 weapon with 8 attacks and devastating wounds, which obviously with the Pact's ability to get lethal or sustain hits takes him up even further, and he's got a lovely sweep profile as well. His gun is okay, but the real juice in Abaddon are the supporting abilities that he brings. Although he's a dangerous piece, he is fragile, so he needs to offer a lot for his points, and he is expensive. You get Dark Destiny, which gives you the ability to generate a CP on a 7-up whenever he makes a Dark Pact, as long as he hasn't failed the leadership test. So you have to make the 7-up on a leadership test to get the CP. More CP is always nice to have, so he's definitely contributing in that way. But his other juice is in his War Master's ability. He can give full rerolls to hit for Heretic Astartes within 6, not damned units. He can give up a 4-up Invuln for heretic infantry or mounted units within range, again not damned units, and he can also give you a reroll leadership or battle shock test aura as well. Now the real juice with Abaddon is of course the reroll hits, and we've seen the Abaddon castle in different forms across the edition. Park Abaddon near tanks make things go boom with rerolls and sustained and or lethals. You can really, if you want to go really juicy, have Abaddon, a Hellbrute and tanks nearby for an incredibly powerful castle that puts out enormous amounts of damage. Obviously, it's terrain and board dependent, but shooting-based Abaddon builds have been very, very successful at different points in the edition. And that ultimately is Abaddon's main power. He is a very blendy melee piece in his own right, and he's particularly spicy in Packbound, where he can get rerolls to wound on his with Chaos Undivided for 1 CP, making that damage 3 Dev Wounds Claw a lot scarier. I think ultimately probably the main thing holding Abaddon back is just that he is very expensive. CSM have taken points rises over the edition. It gets hard to cram everything in, and if you are building around Abaddon, you are investing a lot of points in doing so. You can end up with a gun castle that can be quite static. You get an incredible overwatch lane, you get incredible threat removal, but it's as powerful as those tanks are powerful at a given moment, and it takes them probably to their ceiling in terms of output and potential damage. But I think we've definitely seen it dropping off in recent times. Whether that's just a meta thing, I'm not sure. I suspect there's still a lot of play in as Packbound or Renegade Raiders shooting castle building around Abaddon. And obviously he is one of the most fun single models to run around in CSM because he just does so much damage on his own. Moving it forwards, we have the Chaos Lord, the real unsung hero of the Chaos Space Marines book. The Chaos Lord is a great little damage dealer. Once per game, he can juice himself up to AP and damage 3 on a Demon Hammer with Dev Wounds. He also boosts his strength and his attack, so he becomes very killy, especially in any detachments where you can access rerolls. So he's particularly good with Legionnaires, where the rerolls for wounds helps take his damage up. And you can tool up the Chaos Lords in a number of different detachments to achieve different goals. They're very nice in Packbound, where the additional sustained 5s if the Slanesh Lord is really, really nice. Undivided rerolls can also be quite effective on them there as well. They're great in Renegade Raiders, where the free strat use is massive because Renegade Raiders has a wonderful toolkit. So Chaos Lord's leading Legios are really good precision target removal tools. Accessing free strats helps CSM's sort of command point reroll profile to sing and be very, very effective as well. So lots of detachments in which a Lord works in. The most recent obviously being Creations of Bile, where you can get a damage 4 Lord swinging his hammer about, doing absolutely terrible things to people. And again, there's a really amazing suite of tools and buffs and creations of Bile, which the Chaos Lord very much enjoys. So you rarely see CSM lists that don't dabble in one or two of these to access some free strats and some additional damage juice. They are really good for having just a hard target removing melee missile attached to the wonderful package that is Chaos Legionaries, but we'll get to that in a moment. Chaos Lord is an absolute win. Next up, we have the Lord in Terminator Armour. Now, you don't see the Lord in Terminator Armour quite as much. He also has the free strat ability, so he's very nice in his own right, and he does halve damage as well. He's not as killy. That's probably the main thing holding him back. The damage he actually offers is significantly less. But getting free strats on a brick of Terminators is definitely a valid option in a couple of the detachments that help them sing. So Veterans of the Long War, with its reactive moves and various other buffs, can really help Chaos Terminators to sing. Anywhere you have an Armour of Contempt stratagem is the main thing. They're good in Renegade Raiders as well for similar reasons, and you can actually upgrade a Chaos Lord in a Renegade Raiders unit to have Scout move as well for a very aggressive, powerful brick. Ultimately, Chaos Terminators are a bit expensive. We're not seeing them in lists as often. So that's probably the main thing holding the Chaos Lord back. But actually, he's quite an annoying, resilient scoring piece in his own right with the half damage. So he combos well with nice little durability buffs in some of the other detachments as well. Fellhammer and Creations of Bile both have buffs you can put on a Chaos Lord to make them particularly obnoxious. So the Lord in Terminator Armour, although not as vaunted as his non-Terminator friend, definitely has play, and I'd love to see more CSM lists building around Terminators. There's definitely some fun juice you can apply with that. Taking it forwards, we have the Chaos Lord with Jump Pack. Now, this little guy is suffering a little bit, I think primarily because he can only be attached to Raptors, who in their threat and damage output are fairly limited at the moment. He himself can be perfectly reasonable with Power Fist to do a reasonable amount of damage. He again gives you some free strat energy, and he gives Raptors a 6-inch pile-in or consolidate. There are plenty of nice things about the Chaos Lord with Jump Pack. Ultimately, he's expensive for what you get in terms of output, and again, other lords do it better. I think if you are going to dabble in one, you can use it as a solo scoring operative to run around and use free strats and have a nice time with that. He does have grenades, so essentially a little free grenade caddy is quite fun. And I have used him with Raptors in the Night Lords detachment to get the 6-inch deep strike as well, and exploit some of the tricks and tools in that detachment for free. Deep striking in and doing a grenade is certainly a fun time. It's not at all terrible. I just think in terms of his actual output, he's a bit lackluster, as are Raptors, which means you don't tend to see combination plays attempted with him quite as much. But there definitely are some here, and the Raptors' leadership debuffs and battle shocking definitely does have play, and CSM can definitely be an army of battle shock and CP control, and Raptors and the Chaos Lord Jump Pack can certainly play a role in that. Moving it on, we have the Cultist Firebrand. This is another unit you don't see very much. He's 45 points. He can plug into Accursed Cultists or the Cultist mob, and he has a flamer which he can shoot to trigger battle shock tests. Now, the reality is Accursed Cultists are probably best led by the Dark Commune, and Cultists are best kept cheap. Again, he's a caddy for grenades. He's far from terrible, but probably not an optimal choice. I think having a surprise flamer in there that can also trigger some battle shocks, especially with other debuffs available in CSM, is certainly no bad thing. Rerolling leadership tests on the Accursed is quite fun for their Dark Pacts. It's just that you're less likely to plug him in than a Dark Commune. So a cool model, one that we don't actually see taken all that often. Moving it along, we have a guy you see an awful lot, and that is Cypher. Cypher is having one hell of an addition because he provides some quite unique tools to CSM. He has a 12-inch aura of making your opponent's stratagems more expensive, that is increasing their cost by 1. The melee and sort of resilience potential shutdown from Cypher is huge. If you can keep track of your opponent's command point count, at a clutch moment in the game, he can step out, apply that 12-inch aura. He himself is a lone op, so he's quite hard to engage with. Applying an aura of +1 CP can absolutely ruin an opponent's ability to counteract you in the fight phase. It can make their interrupts too expensive to do. It can make interventions too expensive to do. It can make things like Armor of Contempt or -1 damage too expensive. And certainly, your opponent is not going to be able to use all of these tools. He's one of the, I think, potentially the only lone op in the CSM arsenal, so he's very good in that sense as a scoring piece to stand around ticking off some of the cards. He has perfectly reasonable shooting, especially with his pacts, and he can shoot back in the shooting phase against an opponent as well, which is a cute ability to have. As I say, his main role, as I see it for Chaos Space Marines, is as a fight phase control piece, and you've seen him coupled up with Nemesis Claw in recent times, for reasons we'll get into when we get to Nemesis Claw. Very, very effective unit in his own right, and a cheap plug-in at 90 points. So Cypher, very, very good. Taking it forwards, we have the Dark Apostle. Now, this is a unit you do not see very often. The Dark Apostle gives you +1 to wound in melee for the unit that he's leading. He can unbattle shock a unit once within 12, once per battle. And he's able to do some mortal wounds as well, some sort of sacrifice stuff as well. He's entirely reasonable in melee, but not inspiring. Dark Disciples give you a little bit of mixed profile, and he can lead Accursed Cultists, Chosen, Cultist Mobs, Legios, or Nemesis Claw. Now, I think the interesting thing with the Dark Apostle is that +1 to wound in melee is just a very nice buff. It is very, very good. That's a perfectly reasonable thing to have. I think you could definitely build around the Dark Apostle to hand out +1 to wound for some of these high volume attack units, and he would definitely be a good caddy for a whole bunch of the enhancements and stratagems as well. So there's actually very little reason not to consider looking at him. It's just again that the Chaos Lord offers that free strat high damage potential. You could certainly plug your Dark Apostle into units in your CSM list and not at all be disappointed to get more out of that +1 to wound. Moving it along, we have the Dark Commune. Now, this was infamous. This has been everywhere. It's now a little bit in decline, but the Dark Commune Accursed Cultist package was very, very meta-defining in the early stages of 10th edition. Plugging a Dark Commune into a big brick of Accursed Cultist gives it a 5-up invuln, which gives you a mass mixed wound profile slab with a feel no pain, a 5-up invuln, very hard to deal with. Once per game, the Dark Commune can also allow that unit to advance and charge and get +1 to hit and +1 to wound. Accursed Cultist units with Dark Communes absolutely slap. They can really push forwards, do an awful lot of damage, gum up the opponent, and then create all sorts of challenges via the Blood Surge and other issues that the Accursed Cultists use. So if you're taking big bricks of Accursed Cultists, you're definitely taking a Dark Commune, and they're an excellent caddy for some of the enhancements in Chaos Cults and Renegade Raiders that help those units to be more dangerous and more offensively potent. So Dark Commune is very powerful. I think the only thing holding them back these days is the cost. The cost of an Accursed Cultist and Dark Commune package has gone up massively, but actually I think there's still very much a place for one or two of these in a CSM list. You just have to build very deliberately around them. Next up, we have Fabius Bile. Fabius Bile has emerged as one of the most effective and consistent units in Chaos Space Marines over the last few months, starting in particular with Liam VSL's run with CSM at LGT last year. So Fabius Bile juices up a squad of Chosen like no one's business. He himself has a feel no pain. He has the ability to stand back up on a 2-up the first time he's killed. He has a bunch of damage 3 attacks, which catches people out. Only AP 1, but damage 3, so very nice in Renegade Raiders where you can buff that. He has the ability to blank a save for the unit that he's plugged into, so suddenly you've got a deceptively durable unit of Chosen that he's leading, and he also buffs the strength and toughness of that unit by 1, so that gives you higher strength Chosen with toughness 5. It's an obnoxious, fast and dangerous brick. It works really well as a combat linchpin firing out of a rhino. You've seen it used in Vets of the Long War. You've seen it used in Creations of Bile. You've seen it used in Renegade Raiders. I've been exploring it in Packbound myself more recently as well. There's an awful lot to be said for it. Chaos Undivided Mark is very nice to get the 4 rerolls to wound on that unit as well. So I think Fabius Bile just offers so much to the unit he plugs into, and a Chosen brick is a really good linchpin heavy hitting unit for CSM. It is tough, but not too tough, so don't overestimate it. But it gives you a little bit more staying power in a go turn and helps you to overwhelm the opponent. So Fabius Bile just offers so much for his points. Really incredible value at 85. Moving it along, we have Harkon Worldclaimer. Now, Harkon Worldclaimer has not had such a good addition. We've not seen a ton out of him. He is on paper relatively dangerous. He's got a bunch of strength 5, AP2, damage 2 attacks. He's got one good potential sustained hits D3 lance attack with his Hell Spear, and that works in shooting as well. Unfortunately, the issue he has is the same as the Jump Pack Lord. He can only lead Raptors, which means giving them some sprinkle mortals and the potential to trigger battle shock tests is all well and good, although Raptors already do this, it's worth noting. But ultimately, it's not that effective or dangerous a unit. I think the Mortal Wounds fill is not nothing. It's quite fun in terms of doing a load of chip damage to a tank. The issue is primarily just that if you're investing that many points in Raptors, you're investing in a fairly flimsy, not very damage-dealing unit. So that's a real shame. Harkon's got one of the coolest models in CSM. I would absolutely love to see them do a bit more with him in the future. Maybe buff him up a bit. Maybe move that spear profile over to being his main attacks. That would be cool. Get that damage 3 going for him. I think that would be a huge quality of life improvement for Harkon. Taking it forward, we have the Heretic Astartes Demon Prince. Now, you don't see these much in CSM. They give you a benefit of cover aura around. Cover's already quite easy to get. They have 6 attacks at damage 3, strength 8, or 14, damage 6. Sorry, damage 1, strength 6, but no AP at all. That you can buff up the various attributes by giving them a mark, and you can reroll 1 hit roll and 1 wound roll with them. I think the reality for the Demon Prince is it is expensive. It is not particularly durable. I think we're seeing a lot in Emperor's Children now how changing just a few of the rules on the Demon Princes can make them game-defining. That unfortunately is not where the Heretic Astartes Demon Prince is at. He's just a bit expensive. It's not entirely clear what his role is, and actually getting him into the battle with his movement 8 can be quite difficult as well. If you are running him, probably run him as Slaanesh to make him that little bit faster. I think that's probably the way, or potentially Khorne to buff up the strength. But I think he's an expensive piece for what you get, and he just doesn't synergize particularly well with how the army broadly plays. Next up, we have the Winged Demon Prince. He does some impact mortals on the charge. That's very, very enjoyable. And he also can battle shock a unit that he flies over. This is a perfectly solid unit. Again, we're seeing in Emperor's Children that this thing is definitely effective. The killer difference between the Emperor's Children and Demon Prince and this one is -1 damage, which this one lacks. So it's a fragile piece. Getting it into play can be quite vulnerable. But I think that's where the Winged Demon Prince certainly does have a role, certainly works, particularly as a rapid ingress piece to ingress in somewhere, do sprinkle mortals. The nice thing you can do with these is charge into one unit, finish it off with the mortal wounds, then cascade into another one. There's definitely some enjoyable play in that. I'd be interested to see if CSM players fancy taking some of the techniques we're seeing with Emperor's Children, applying it to the CSM Demon Prince. I'm sure you can achieve some similar results. Ultimately, a little bit durable, sort of lacking in durability and output. That is the prime concern for the points that you're paying. Next up, we have Huron Blackheart. This is one of my favourite units in the CSM book. I think Huron is actually a bit of a dark horse. It has a lot more going for him than people necessarily appreciate, and I love using him in games. He gives his unit +1 OC, so you can have him plugged into a Chosen Brick to make it OC2, or a Legio unit to make it OC3. Very, very effective, and he himself becomes OC2 as well. He gives you a redeploy, so you can select up to 3 Heretic Astartes infantry and redeploy them either into reserves or on the board. This works great with things like Obliterators who want to use their artillery, Warp Talons that want to move to where an enemy unit is and pick it off to get their first sort of going up into the sky of the game. And it also helps you fake out your opponent with a deployment before moving a unit somewhere else. So I think Huron offers an awful lot. He's actually not too shabby in combat either. He's got a lovely chaff clearing sweep there with 10 attacks. And he also comes with a Flame of the Tyrant's Claw, which is very nice. He's good for bullying chaff and screens and things like that. And then his unit can hit into the real things behind it. I think Huron, for what you get, and you're only paying 80 points, is actually very good value. Again, he's competing with Chaos Lords. That's the issue a lot of these characters face. But I think you can have an awful lot of fun with Huron Blackheart in Veterans of the Long War, in Renegade Raiders, in Packbound. He offers an awful lot. So I think he's definitely a fun one to experiment with. If you're struggling to find the points for another Lord, give Huron a try. I think you'll enjoy what he gives you. And he does combo particularly well, as stated, with Obliterators and Warp Talons. Moving it on down, we've got the poor old Lord Discordant on Hellstalker. Now, this is a unit that was infamous in 9th, but has dropped off considerably. It is ostensibly an anti-vehicle unit. It can potentially give an enemy vehicle -1 to hit, or make it ineligible to shoot in your opponent's shooting phase if he's within 12 of it. And he has the potential to get reroll wound rolls of 1 against the target as well. The main issue he has is that he's 160 points. He is not particularly durable. He's only got a 5-up invuln, so he's quite vulnerable to decent AP attacks, and his actual attacks themselves are incredibly middling. A handful of attacks coming in at strength 6, and even with Lance on his Chainglaive, he's pretty limited. So I think the Lord Discordant has just arrived at a place where it's not clear what it's supposed to be doing, how it's supposed to be working, and I think it probably needs a bit of a redo. This is one of the real victims of the edition. We've just not seen them popping up in lists at all, almost at any point. But as part of a wider sort of, Demon Engine skew list, there's no harm in having him in there if that's the vibe you're going for. OC4 is quite nice on him, but yeah, his redeeming features are relatively hard to find. Next up, we have the Master of Executions. Now, the Master of Executions is quite an interesting little piece. He complements Legios really well. He can plug into those. He gives them rerolls to hit against an enemy below starting strength and rerolls to wound if they're below half strength. He's situationally very useful. I think the reality is in a lot of the CSM detachments, you're finding other ways to get your hit and wound rerolls, especially Legios on objectives or stratagems on a couple of the detachments. His active dismemberment is perfectly reasonable. Some dev wounds and precision does no harm, and he does get a CP when he kills a character. He's competing directly with the Lord. That is very much his issue again. And I think ultimately you don't see it as much because there are other ways to get the things that he offers. But he's certainly a very nice little plug-in to a Legio's unit. It gives you lots of melee blending. And he can be a reasonable caddy for enhancements as well if you're not taking a Lord. Next up, we've got the Master of Possession. Master of Possession is a lot of fun. You can do some very silly things with this. So he can lead Chosen, Legionaries, or Possessed, as well as Nemesis Claw. He gives that unit +1 to advance and charge rolls. So anywhere you can get advance and charging Possessed, he is particularly fun. And he can also take a mortal wound and then get +1 to hit and wound with his psychic attack. So his anti-psyker weapons are quite funny against large psychic units, particularly greater demons and stuff like that. He can really push through damage there. His main appeal for me is plugging into a unit of Possessed, particularly in something like Renegade Raiders, and giving them an enhancement for a scout move. You get a very aggressive forward pressure piece with that. I think at the moment, the main reason you don't see him is just that part of the appeal of Possessed is that they're a cheap slab of wounds, and once you've got him in, they're not a cheap slab of wounds. They're much more expensive as an investment. But anywhere you have advance and charge, he can definitely combo really nicely to get you a turbocharged unit of Possessed that moves deceptively fast and has a nice amount of punch into psykers as well. Taking it along, we've got the Sorcerer. I've not seen the Sorcerer much. He can give a unit -1 to hit when it's being attacked with prescience, and he can do some mortal wounds to an opponent as well if they were a psyker. So, if it was hit by his psychic attack. He's cheap at 60 points. He's a very cheap leader to plug into a unit, but the reality is his output is pretty terrible. The attacks don't offer an awful lot. Very, very random. And simply put, he just simply isn't giving enough to justify his inclusion in a lot of lists. But at 60 points, you do wonder if there's some shooting combinations in CSM units he might actually be able to make a case for himself. But not seen the Sorcerer used very much at all. One Sorcerer we absolutely have seen explored is the Sorcerer in Terminator Armour. He gives his unit reroll advance and charge rolls, and crucially he has Death Hex, which means he's picking a unit within 12 at the start of your shooting phase that he can see. And he's rolling a dice. On a 2-up, every other unit in your army that's attacking it gains +1 AP. This is a very spicy thing to put on all sorts of CSM units. Sort of focusing down a target with +1 AP is really nice. The Sorcerer in Chaos Terminators is great. Again, any detachments where you have advance and charge, being able to re-roll these makes them particularly quick. I love him with Slaanesh Terminators in Pac-Man. Seen some very effective things done with him there. He is a good, cheapish leader to plug into Chaos Space Marine Terminators, but you can also run him on his own, deep striking in to apply that extra AP somewhere on the board. Really good for cracking a 2-up save tank, for example, at a key moment in the game. And he's quite fun. You can do some fun things with Deceptors, switching his aura around and putting it in the right places without committing him. He's quite a fun caddy for the lone op enhancement in that detachment as well. Definitely an effective little piece. He brings an army-wide buff that is extremely potent, and I think you can do some very nice build-arounds with the Sorcerer in Terminator Armour. Moving it forwards, we have the Traitor Enforcer with his Ogryn bodyguard. Quite cute. They've got a Feel No Pain 4-up. They're a little slab of wounds. You can run them in Traitor Guard. I've not seen it done, but I don't see why not. And you can target that unit with a free Overwatch, even if someone else already has. I think the Traitor Enforcer is cheap. He's got that going for him. Cheap for the wounds that you get, but he's just not especially vital. The models are awesome. I have both of them. I really love them. And the Ogryn weapons aren't terrible. There's a bunch of damage too in there. So he would certainly turn a Traitor Guard unit into a much more dangerous prospect. And the Feel No Pain is certainly obnoxious as well, because the Traitor Ogryn makes the characters more durable. But it's just, again, a plug-in for a cheap throwaway unit that you ultimately don't really want when you could just have 2 of the cheap throwaway unit instead. And that tends to be the issue for the Traitor Enforcer. Moving it along, we have Vashtorr the Arkifane. So Vashtorr's model is amazing, and his rules are not terrible. He has a bunch of Strength 14, AP2 damage 3 attacks with Dev Wounds and Anti-Vehicle 4-up. This can get really out of hand if you can access pacts and get some nice additional buffs on it. Quite good in Renegade Raiders to take him to AP3 as well if he's targeting on objectives. The sweep is merely okay. Friendly Demon Vehicle units gain an additional point of strength when they're within 6 of him, which is absolutely a very nice thing to have. And each time an enemy unit within 18 targets him, their weapons are considered to have hazardous. Now, this is actually really funny. I really like Vashtorr as an ingress piece. He is 14 wounds, 2-up, 4-up, T10. He is surprisingly obnoxious, especially in detachments where you can get access to Armour of Contempt. It's 175 points, so he is an expensive investment, but the model's fantastic. He has a very nice weapon for smashing through vehicles with, and actually some of his debuffs and buffs are particularly nice. I think you can get a lot of use out of him in Soulforge, Warp Pack, or anything that you're planning on running a bunch of Forge Fiends and Venom Crawlers in. And he's one of those units that, although we joke about him being bad, he's actually deceptively good and brings a lot more to the table than you'd necessarily expect. If you want to play with one of the bigger pieces that's not quite as much of an investment as Abaddon, I think Vashtorr is a very reasonable consideration to look at. Finally, we have the Humble Warpsmith, 70 points. Nice, cheap, gets blown up when he's near vehicles. He can give them +1 to hit. He can make enemy units within 12 take battle shocks. He himself has a smattering of reasonable guns as well. I think the combinations with the Warpsmith that you really want to see are alongside Predators and Vindicators and Forge Fiends as a support piece for them, healing them up, making them more effective. But he can also tick off your scoring cards at the same time. He can be doing Recover Assets, he can be doing Sabotage, he can be doing Containment, safe in the Lone Op aura, provided by being near the vehicles. Obviously, the risk here is you lose the vehicles, so do be careful. Perhaps the best one too with this is having him near Nurgle vehicles in Packbound, because you can then Lone Op 18 those vehicles with the strat and just have a whole area of the board that's shooting the opponent quite hard, but is also protected from their retaliatory fire. I think the Warpsmith is really nice. If you want one cheap character in a list, you don't want to take Lords altogether, the Warpsmith can definitely be a lot of fun, definitely worth looking at. Lucius, no longer kicking about in CSM. He's out of here. Emperor's Shield and have a new book, so I don't think we need to worry about Lucius. So that takes us through to the units themselves. First up, we have the Humble Cultist Mob Chaos Cultists. These are just useful. You can take them in 10s or 20s. They give you sticky objectives. They're cheap and cheerful. They can be caddies for strats. They can be caddies for grenades. They can be caddies for various different buffs. I love Nurgle Cultists in Packbound to use again. The Lone Op just makes them extremely obnoxious. They're cheap and cheerful. You can run quite a lot of them in Deceptors if you want to put a lot of them mid-board to get sticky objectives and then pressure the opponent. That's one of the builds we've not seen a ton of, but it certainly does have play. And they're just cheap and cheerful and can get the opponent out for your damage dealers. I think CSM have incredible damage units, both at range and in combat. The art of playing CSM well is either getting that stuff to your opponent through playing high pressure or getting them to come to you. And one of the ways you can do that is using cheap cultists as bait. At the very least, you can use them to screen your backfield and sticky your home objective, and that's no bad thing at all. Competing with them in the battle line slot is probably one of the best battle line units in the entire game, the Chaos Legionaries. These are beautiful. You can tool them up in a whole bunch of ways with different guns. You can take nice damage to heavy melee weapons. They get reroll 1s to wound innately. They can reroll their dark packs, and they also get full rerolls to wound if the opponent is on an objective. This makes these deceptively dangerous. Between grenades and on-objective damage, between a bit of shooting and a bit of fighting, Legionaries are able to put a lot of hurt through almost anything. They are deceptively good at punching up, and they're little OC2 trade pieces as well. I absolutely love having multiple squads of Legionaries in Rhinos in a CSM list to play all the mission play, cause threat overload, and do a deceptive amount of damage as well. This is what you combo the Lord with, because once the Lord gets that full reroll to wound, his damage 3 hammer goes to some really enjoyable places on the Dev Wounds front. So you get really powerful damage dealing packages here. My personal favourite plugin for the shooting is the Reaper Chain Cannon with its 8 shots at strength 5. It's very funny having Legionaries stashed away in a Rhino, firing out the firing deck. You can fire 2 chain cannons out, have 16 shots flying out, but I've seen a lot of people running the las cannon because a Rhino firing 2 las cannon shots is also really, really good. It sort of depends what you're tooling them up to deal with. Is it screens or hard targets? But yeah, very, very effective and deceptively dangerous in multiple phases. Legionaries have had a very good addition, and at 90 points they are really, really good value. Next up, we have Khorne Berserkers. You can plug the allies into the CSM detachment. So there's certainly some play in plugging in Khorne Berserkers. They give you a combat unit. They give you a blood surge. They are 90 points for 5. I've not seen them used an awful lot, but there's lots of application of them as another Rhino trading piece if you are so minded using Khorne Berserkers. I think that the other cult units fall in a similar place. Plague Marines are perfectly reasonable, cheap, tough infantry you can plug in for 90 points. But again, you don't see it a ton. There's actually a fun Vets of the Long War combination with a stratagem. If you take Plague, Flamers, and Spewers on the Plague Marines, you can use a stratagem to get maximum hits with all of these things. That is situationally very funny. And obviously, they could use the Nurgle strat in Packbound. So they have some application. You haven't seen them a ton. What you have seen more often is Rubric Marines. Rubric Marines absolutely love Renegade Raiders, where they get Assault and additional AP on objectives, which combos with their rerolls to wound, because that takes their Flamers up to AP2 base, going up to AP3 with their Icon on 6s as well. Very effective, shooting out of rhinos, yeeting out onto objectives, flipping points in a sort of OC, MSU heavy Renegade Raiders list. Josh Roberts, I think, pioneered this, and Rubric Marines are fantastic in those builds. Next up, we've got the dedicated transports, and of course the Chaos Rhino. This is honestly one of the best units of the entire edition, guys. The Chaos Rhino has had an incredible time. It is 75 points, it is a tank chassis, it self-repairs, it has a firing deck too, so units inside can use the Rhino's guns and their own, so it shoots a lot harder than you would expect for a 75-point tank, and of course it's going to help you get your transports up the board. Combo as well in any detachment with defensive buffs for it, whether that's lone op, whether that's -1 AP, etc. And the key thing with the Chaos Rhino is it's a party starter. You shove these out with stuff inside, the opponent has to respond. That then gives you a bunch of things for your damage dealing units to counter attack and hurt, and it can help you get your Legios and Lords up the board, and those are the real juice in a lot of the builds in CSM that we see. So for its points, simply one of the most obnoxious and effective tanks in the game. What an addition for the Chaos Rhino. Fortifications, we have the Noctalith Crown. Now, I've never seen this used, but let's hear it out. Let's give it a go. Can't move, obviously it's a fortification. You improve his Heretic Astartes leadership by 1 whilst nearby. If that model is not fully visible because of the fortification, it hands out cover. So it kind of just hands out more cover. And it can make opponents -1 to hit unless with a pistol. Models in the unit do not need to take desperate escapes due to falling back while battle shock, except that those that move over enemy models when doing so. It does some stuff. I've not seen this taken. It's fun that it does actually have some attacks. It just isn't a fortification addition, and the Noctalith Crown does not synergize very well with anything else that you're doing. Moving it along, we have the Accursed Cultists. These are all-stars. They've had a great addition. They are expensive now, but they remain very effective. The killer appeal of the Accursed Cultist unit is the mixed profile. You essentially have several Chaos spawn in the unit with 3 wounds each, T4, and a bunch of individual zombies with T4, 1 wound. The Chaos spawn have a bunch of damage to AP1, Strength 5 attacks. The zombies are less important. The unit as base has a Feel No Pain 6 and Scout 6. I actually really like using MSU squads of Accursed Cultists without any supporting characters. For scout move, pushing up, any detachment with advance and charge, that can cover a lot of ground, put on really annoying early pressure. It has a blood surge move, so when the opponent shoots it, it can roll a d6 and it can move into combat. That actually makes dealing with small packs of these or large packs of these very fiddly. The opponent has to commit real damage to that unit, or it's going to get surged into and tied up and trapped again. Obviously, the larger bricks of these with Dark Communes are where the real money is at. Getting it a 5-up invuln, getting it the potential to advance and charge, +1 to hit and wound suddenly takes these things up. But Dark Packs in general really boost the output on Accursed Cultists. They're a very versatile unit. We've seen a lot of them used in Renegade Raiders. We've seen them used in Pac-Bound. We've seen them used in Chaos Cults, where they are the linchpin damage dealing unit. And there is an Accursed Cultist heavy build in Deceptors as well. There's an awful lot you can do with them. They are paying for their sins. They've been one of the best units in the book for a long time, which means they're very expensive now, but you can still have an awful lot of fun with Accursed Cultists. And the combination of early pressure and blood surge move is a skill check that a lot of opponents simply fail to navigate their way out of at the first attempt, which is always good fun. Next up, we've got Chaos Bikers. These sit in a really nice point in the army at the moment, only 70 points for 3, and a discount if you take 6. They have a little bit of damage. They're packing grenades, they're packing melter guns if you equip them that way, which obviously with packed can punch up quite deceptively. They have a power fist in the units, they've got a little bit of output, they're quick, they're OC2, relatively tough at T5, 3 wounds, and they get additional strength on the charge as well. Their main appeal is being cheap, quick, and deceptively durable. They're a good caddy for actions. They can do a little bit of early trading and blocking. The OC2 is deceptive and quite annoying as well. And they force real commitment for the opponent. So they're lovely as your supporting scoring pieces that can also actually do a little bit of damage. It's just a shame they lost the ability to go into reserves and come back, because that was absolutely amazing on them before. Next up, we've got the Chaos Land Raider. Definitely in the fun-to-use category, but actually effective. It has Assault Ramp, so it can make a move your units can get out and still charge. It has Soul Shatter Las Cannon, so that's 4 shots coming in at Las Cannon profile with d6 +1 damage. So that in and of itself is quite punchy. It is a 2-up save with 16 wounds. It's OC5. It takes a little bit of dealing with, and it can help you to ferry some possessed or terminators to the front line. The Land Raider is entirely cute and nice to have, and obviously with Dark Packs, those las cannons can punch up. It is 240 points, so it ultimately comes in quite expensive, and there are other tanks that probably have more output. The reality is it's the Rhino beating the Land Raider out, because the Rhino is simply so cheap and so valuable that you would rather have 3 of those, which you can have for the same points, than a Land Raider, and just soup those up with their contents. But yeah, it's still a really cool, fun centerpiece, and you can have quite fun push plays with the Land Raider and Terminators jumping out of it if you're so minded. Next up, we've got the Predator Annihilator. This is having a moment because it's gone down in points. It's a little bit cheaper. It rerolls its damage against monsters and vehicles. You can effectively have 3 las cannon shots coming out of it. Now, in the CSM list you can build, where you could have Abaddon, giving it full rerolls. You can have Sustained. You can have a Hellbrute nearby for lethals as well. These shoot deceptively hard. They also have the Havoc Launcher and the Bolters, so they can put out a bit of anti-chaff shooting as well. And if you're spamming CSM hulls, popping an Annihilator or 2 in to keep your costs down but keep the saturation of tanks is a very valid way to play. So these are nice in Vets, in Renegade Raiders, in Pack-Bound. Any of the detachments that have the ability to juice up the shooting can get value from the Predator Annihilator, and it does have the advantage of being one of the cheaper gun tanks you can take. Its brother, the Chaos Predator Destructor, is also very good. Only 5 points more at 140. We're seeing a lot of this out there in the world now. It's got a very nice ability to stack AP against infantry. So this is especially good in Renegade Raiders, where if it's firing at infantry, it'll be coming in at AP 3. The Predator Autocannon is a bunch of strength 9, damage 3 shooting. Very nice. You can equip it with a couple of las cannons to offer a bit of hard target threat. But I also see these run with the heavy bolters to maximize sustained potential via packs, and also give you a nice overwatch lane control as well. The Predator Destructor is still very cheap and cheerful for what it does. Absolutely hoses infantry, especially in Renegade Raiders, and they love Abaddon rerolls if they can get Abaddon nearby as well. A couple of these is great for sort of screening out the defensive portions of your board and still be contributing to the game and offense as well. And you've seen these in CSM lists throughout the edition. They're just very consistent, solid tank. Don't expect it to change the world, but do expect it to chip in very happily, repeatedly across a game. Next up, we've got the Chaos Spawn. I love the Chaos Spawn. I struggle to justify fitting them in now. They're OC 0, but they have an extremely funny OC reduction, right? So anything that's not a vehicle within 3 of them has their OC subtracted by 1. They have Feel No Pain. They have similar attacks to the Accursed Cultists. I just think the OC 0 holds them back. It means they can't do actions. It means that they need to use their aura to actually be relevant on objectives. And you'd rather just have more stuff that is making your opponent dead or putting good OC on. You compare that to like 6 OC bikes versus maybe making some -1 OC off the spawn. It just doesn't quite work, which is a real shame. I love the models of Chaos Spawn. I'd love to see them in lists a little bit more. Next up, you've got Chaos Terminators. As alluded to a couple of times already, Chaos Terminators are just a little bit expensive. It's 360 for 10. I think their primary issue is that they are not quite as durable as you'd like them to be. They are deceptively dangerous in output because they get full hit rerolls whenever they pack, which means you can stack on lethals or sustained hits. They have a lot of combi bolter potential, so you can do a bunch of devastating wounds with rapid fire, and they do basically stack on a whole bunch of damage to AP2 attacks. It's not that the unit is bad. I think it's just that it's a little bit slower and less wieldy than some of the other options available to CSM. But you can definitely build around a kind of anchor unit of Terminators in a number of different detachments. They love Veterans of the Long War, where the reactive move is very effective on them, but they also enjoy Renegade Raiders, where the buffs are very relevant to them too. In Pack-Bound, if you have a unit in Slaanesh so it can advance, shoot and charge, or in Nurgle so it can use the Lone Op strat to protect itself, there's definitely play in those things. But we just don't see them quite as much because a 5-man doesn't have enough output and a 10-man is a huge investment in points. If you want to be an absolute baller, obviously plug Abaddon into this and just go the whole hog with a massive murder brick that is absolutely ludicrous in its potential output and incredibly expensive to run. Next up, we've got the Vindicator, another tank that has had an incredible addition for CSM. This is just an absolute baller of a unit. It packs a very dangerous Demolisher Cannon, D6 plus 3 blast, strength 14, AP 3, damage D6. As soon as you get Dark Packs involved for sustained and or lethals, as soon as you get Abaddon involved for rerolls, you get a tank that can kill God. It just puts so much damage on the opponent. It is paying for that now. It's 185 points. It's got more expensive. But the Vindicator is a linchpin unit because it just packs so much damage. One of these coming in from reserves is an enormous threat. One of these can guard an area of the board with an overwatch lane, especially next to Abaddon, that will basically guarantee kills against certain units. So I love to see one or two Vindicators in a CSM list. The short ranges, occasionally they're done doing, and they are actually quite easy to kill if the opponent can connect into them. That's the only thing holding them back. They are a really, really effective gun tank that keeps the opponent very, very honest. Moving along, we've got Chosen. Chosen were not the go-to at the start, but they certainly are now. Chosen have become a must-take for CSM over the last year or so. They offer you shoot, advance, and charge, and fallback as well. They have tons of attacks, most of it damage 1 AP2, but a lot of twin linked in there, and some power fist attacks, and a bunch of volume shooting as well. Ultimately, it's the fact that there's 10 of them with 3 wounds each. Buffed up with Bile, for example, gives you an extremely durable unit. The ability to advance and charge out of rhinos without using stratagems really helps them as well, because it lets you put the pressure on with them and another unit at the same time. Because actually, deceptively, speed can be an issue for CSM sometimes without those kinds of buffs. A 10 brick of Chosen with Bile is just one of the most fun units to play in the game, so it's absolutely worth considering. And MSU Chosen with Lords is very effective in a whole bunch of the detachments as well. Moving along, we have the Defiler. Oh God, I love the Defiler so much, but it's not good. You can use the Defiler in Soulforge Warp Pack, particularly to get synergies with Warpsmiths and rerolls. It can be targeted with the counter offensive stratagem for free, and it can move over terrain features that are 4 or less in height as if they were not there. So it has a little bit of play. It has some quite punchy Defiler claws that are very high damage if it does actually manage to connect, and you can load it up with a bunch of guns. It's not that it's bad in terms of its potential output. The issue it has is that it's a huge crab that moves 8, is hard to position, hard to hide, and does die fairly trivially when targeted. As with Death Guard, I think there's more play in Defilers than people necessarily give credit for. You certainly can use them. There's just a model not a ton of people have these days. It feels like it's fading out of the range, but there is undeniable power in Defiler output. The potential melee, the potential tank shock, the potential damage is very real. So it's quite fun to play around with as a unit. It's just the size and footprint of it is incredibly awkward to use. Next up, we've got Felgore Beastmen. This is a classic case of I'm not sure why you'd want to do this. It's a very fragile goat unit with a little bit of damage that can come in a turn early from strategic reserves. It's just not entirely clear how it's going to help you in the game. It's quite funny. It's an interesting tool. You could suddenly pop up somewhere a bit further, but I think if the opponent is screening well, you're not going to get any use out of it. And ultimately, you're not getting any damage or meaningful impact on the game from the Beastmen themselves. So at 85 points, just go Cultist instead, or Accursed for a little bit more to get a lot more value. Next up, we've got the Forge Fiend. You don't see these as much now, but they're still terrifying, right? Especially if a meta builds towards elite infantry, the Forge Fiend is your friend with its ectoplasma cannons, strength 10, AP 3, damage 3, potentially full rerolls to wound. Impact bound is a really spicy one. Anyway, you can get lots of rerolls on the hits. Really takes these up, and these will absolutely delete bricks of Terminators in the right circumstances. The Forge Fiend's expensive now at 180. It's a really good honesty threat walking on from a board edge. I really enjoy having 1 or 2 of these in a shooting-based CSM list. You just need to keep an eye on whether your meta is one that has a bunch of elite infantry that are worth blasting. If it does, Forge Fiends absolutely make hay. They are very, very effective at what they do. Next up, we've got Havocs. Interestingly, these are seeing play in Be'lakor's Shadow Legion at the moment. They ignore modifiers to the hit roll and ballistic skill. I think the basic issue that the Havocs tend to have is just that the guns you can equip them with feel a little bit lackluster compared to the CSM tanks. 4 las cannons doesn't really do it the same way that a Vindicator Demolisher cannon can. They themselves are fragile. I've seen them played in Renegade Raiders, jumping out of rhinos to get full rerolls to hit and wound, so they definitely have play there. And we obviously, seeing them played in Be'lakor's detachment demonstrates that if you can use lone op strats on them, they definitely have some degree of play, so it's not terrible impact bound either. Might be worth exploring them in that detachment too. They are cheapish at 125 points. 1 or 2 units plugging in is not a terrible thing. I think in general, the tanks have had such a good addition that people have preferred the durability those offer. But yeah, definitely worth looking at 1 or 2 Havoc units and seeing what that offers alongside your other guns, potentially, depending on the targets you're trying to build for. Next up, we've got El Brute, the Hellbrute. So the Hellbrute is especially good if you're playing with Abaddon, because he wanders around with Abaddon. He's got a little hammer. He can do some las cannon type damage attacks. He packs a tank shot. He's a 2-up save. He's quite a nice little bodyguard for Abaddon, but also he gives anything dark pacting within 6 the ability to get both lethal and sustain. Now, this is really fun when you've got a full rerolls Abaddon Castle and a unit overwatching with full rerolls with lethal and sustained. It will simply push damage through things. It is quite alarming how much damage CSM units can cause when they're castled up next to Abaddon and the Hellbrute. It's a big investment to achieve this, but you get incredible damage output in one or two places on the board. And there are certain metas and situations where that is phenomenally powerful. It works really well in Pac-Man, where you can have crit 5s and just take the damage up even more. It works well in Renegade Raiders, where the extra AP is really nice and the assault is really nice. And if you're comboing it with Veterans of the Long War, you can obviously have multiple sources of rerolls focusing down the opponent in multiple parts on the board as well. So those shooting CSM-based lists really, really like this. They've just not been quite as in vogue in recent times. Next up, we've got the Helldrake. This has not had quite as good a time as some of its peers. It is a fairly low damage flyer with a fairly underwhelming flamer or autocannon or Helldrake claws. It is not terrible, but it is not good. It is 205 points, and it's just hard to see where an OC0 unit fits in that sense. Using it to fly over and bully units behind the lines will always have some degree of place and role, but it's just not competing even remotely with its peers in terms of damage or threat, which means people go for the other CSM land tanks instead, unfortunately. As someone who owns 2 Night Lords Helldrakes, I'd love these to be good, so if someone could engineer that at some point, I would appreciate it a lot. Khorne Lord of Skulls. Now, this is a Titanic model. I've not seen it used a ton in CSM. It does have a whole bunch of shooting. It is a big 24 wound slab of a thing. T13 is very nice. The 3-up save is not nice. I don't love the movement 8 on it. The OC8 is very funny. It has a very big sweep, and it can inflict battle shock tests on the opponent. Deadly Demise D6+2 is also extremely funny. It's just a big glory piece. I don't think it necessarily offers an awful lot for CSM lists. It's just a little bit swingy for what you get. But actually, the output on it is pretty insane, especially if stood near Abaddon. So a cute build building around this, towing on and blasting things whilst Abaddon buffs it up, definitely isn't a world away from being effective at all. Next up, we've got the Mauler Fiend. This can ignore any and all modifiers to its move and advance and charge rolls. It actually packs real good punch. 6 attacks at strength 14, AP2, damage D6+1, and then additional attacks is really not bad at all. And it's a very good slab of wounds with an invuln for 130 points. In Soulforge Warp Pack, where it can run through walls, this is really, really good. And actually, they're not terrible in a whole bunch of detachments, literally as a distraction Khan effects, right? You shove the Mauler Fiend out first. The opponent very much has to deal with it, which means they're going to commit some guns, which is then going to free you up to do other things and cause other kinds of mayhem as well. So yeah, the Mauler Fiend, not bad at all. Deceptively dangerous, I think, and a good party starter, putting some early pressure on the opponent. Just depends a bit on the board as to whether it's going to be able to move around very much. Obliterators next. So Obliterators have had a weird rise, fall, rise again. They give you something quite unique in that they can be indirect fire for once in a game. They have a Melter 2 damage 4 shot. Can't really be used coming in from reserves, but it's very good on the board. Ruinous Salvo damage 2 shot with lots more volume, and a sustained hits 1 Warp Hail more volume shot as well. And they're actually not terrible in combat with 4 attacks at strength 9, AP2, damage 2. They're tougher than they look. T7, 5 wounds, 2 up, 5 up. Annoying to shift. They are slow. 4-inch movement is their biggest downfall, as is the fact you tend to need to work them into the game via reserves. But occasionally, there are metas where having that bit of indirect is really good. They are very swingy now that indirect hits on 4s. They rely heavily on Abaddon and his rerolls to be effective, but actually Abaddon castled with Obliterators is a very real and very dangerous thing. They have a place walking on from a board edge as well. You can definitely do some nice things with a blitz coming in from deep strike and threatening the opponent. And I think people are disproportionately scared of Obliterators, which you can use to your advantage. But actually, I've never been that impressed with them in terms of their output outside of Abaddon castle nonsense, where they can serve a really nice role. Possessed, one of the recent all-stars in the CSM index. The Possessed are a tough slab of wounds. That is their biggest appeal. They are T6, 3 wounds, 5 up invuln. You can get 10 of them for 240 points, which is nice and cheap for what you get. Once per game, they can pop a bunch of devastating wounds. The only detachment in which this is consistently dangerous is Pack-bound, where you can... to be fair, no, it works in Creations of Bile as well. In both those detachments, you can get full rerolls to wound, which suddenly takes their dev wound turn up to a really dangerous place. In a lot of CSM detachments, what you'll find with the Possessed is that their main ability is being around and dying slowly, tying things up, causing mayhem, pushing into the opponent's face. The actual damage is incredibly variable. AP1 can let you down. Strength 5 can let you down. Even the Dev Wounds damage 2 can let you down. But what they are is cheap, fast, and obnoxious. And they are very good for applying forward pressure whilst your guns, lords, legios get to work and get the job done. So Possessed are very fun, really enjoyable to play. You can, as I say, run them cheap for 240 in Bile or Renegade Raiders and have a very good time with the strats. They combo well in Pack-Bound as well. I've had a lot of fun with these as a trapping unit in the Dread Talent detachment as well. Lots going on with Possessed, and even the baby MSU 5-mans are quite annoying as well. Next up, we've got Raptors. I've bemoaned Raptors a little bit already, so let's do them some justice. They do have a few unique abilities. Raptors can force battle shocks at -1 while an enemy unit is within 6. They can also trigger mass battle shock at the start of the fight phase, so they have the ability to shut down enemy stratagems, potentially, if they fail. So they're nice for leadership debuff stacking. It's never a very successful way to win 40k games, but it's cute to have. They are ultimately cheap at 90 points for 5, so you can have little squads flying around as potential action doers or flexible part damage dealers. The reality is that they don't have a ton of output and they're quite fragile. There are some fun combination plays in Dread Talons where you can get 6-inch Deep Strike, where you can get additional debuffs, where you can be triggering opponents' battle shocks a lot more. And this is probably the detachment where you see the most interesting combination plays for them, but it's also one of the worst CSM detachments. So that's the primary concern for the Raptors. But at 90 points, a perfectly reasonable, cheap MSU unit to have amongst the other ones you're using. Traitor Guardsmen squad, they can get benefit of cover on an objective. They are cheap and cheerful. Ultimately, they don't tend to see lists outside of Chaos Cults, where you're going for all the cultists, so it makes sense to have them. They do pack a bunch of little different weapons and guns. There's nothing bad about them in that sense. I just think 70 points, I'd almost always take Bikers instead in standard CSM or Chaos Cultists for cheaper if I still want the 10-body effect. So they're merely okay. The OC2 isn't nothing there. Nice little squad of OC2 is definitely an interesting sort of thrower off of the OC game. The CSM have a lot of OC in some of these builds, and you can do some interesting things in Chaos Cults and Deceptors with lots of OC2. Venom Crawler next. The Venom Crawler was, I think, in vogue. It's only 120 points. It packs a bunch of Strength 6, AP1 damage to shooting and combat, and it gets additional attacks at the end of the fight phase if it's destroyed something. I think the AP lets the Venom Crawler down, and that's why it's probably best in Renegade Raiders, where it can go up to AP2. 12-inch move is nice. This can do a similar job that we discussed with the Mauler Fiend. You shove these out early. They force enemy commitment because they're tough enough that the opponent has to commit real things to kill them, and they're cheap enough that then you can retaliate with your real damage dealers. So as a first wave, I do like the Venom Crawler, and its big fat base is quite fun for screening as well. It does struggle to get around a bit, especially on the edges of the board there. Right, now we've got a controversial one, Warp Talons. I love Warp Talons. They have seen some adjustments. They are an incredibly useful tool, but they're also an endlessly frustrating one. They have a quite unique ability for CSM, which is that at the end of the fight phase, if this unit destroyed one or more enemy units, it's not within engagement range, it can go up into the sky. So if you confirm a kill, stay out of engagement range, you can go up in the sky, then you can rapid ingress back in and do it somewhere else. They're very good at killing chaff. They have a bunch of Strength 5, AP2, Damage 1 with Twin Linked. They can have Sustained. I love them with Slaanesh, where they get crit 5s in Pack-Ban, but they're good in Renegade Raiders as well. A 5 or a 10 of these has a very specific job. It bullies exactly the kind of things it can hurt. It goes up in the sky, it ingresses in, it keeps that threat coming. The thing with Warp Talons is that you're investing a lot of CP in the tricks and tools to make it work. It is very easy for using it to go wrong. They can be picked off by Overwatch, they can be picked off by an intervening unit, they can get hit by fights first or indirect. But if you can get the conditions right and use a Warp Talons unit effectively for 2 to 3 to 4 turns, they make their points back and some very aggressively. We've seen the power of this kind of technique in the new Bloodthirster used in Shadow Legion. Warp Talons do very much pack that. They are just a finesse unit to use, and sometimes CSM prefer to be a hammer. I highly recommend trying a 5 or a 10 just because it's extremely funny and opponents absolutely despise them. Noise Marines, I think, have currently been under adjustment, so we'll have to see where Noise Marines fall in the future, which takes us down to Nemesis Claw. This is one of the sleeper hits of the CSM rule set now. They got added in after Night Lord's got a kill team in the kill team game. Essentially, they give you a very powerful fight phase control option because enemy units cannot be targeted with stratagems whilst they're within engagement range of the bearer's unit. That's incredible. You combo that with Cypher. Cypher's making their stratagems more expensive. Nemesis Claw are in a fight where the opponent can't use stratagems at all. You can have a massive go turn where you shut down the opponent's capacity to fight you off completely. They are relatively cheap considering how powerful their rule is at 110. I really like having one Nemesis Claw unit in your army to give you some very nice fight phase control and to shut down enemy counterplays. They themselves have a bunch of essentially damage 1 output with some rerolls and sustained. Nothing at all wrong with that. +1 to hit and +1 to wound is very nice, but the real money is in the Voice Eater effect. Shutting down opponent stratagems altogether is a phenomenally powerful thing. So Nemesis Claw are a really nice plugin in a combat-centered CSM list. That, I think, guys, takes us to the end. Very extensive guide, lots of units covered, a lot of fun to make. Thank you very much. I shall look forward to making the next installment of CSM 101 very soon. Let me know what you thought. Please do leave us a like and subscribe, leave a comment, let us know. And if there's anything you'd like to see done in the future, I would be more than happy to help. Lowest of Men out. Bye-bye.